Good morning. Thank you for calling me to the FDCA. Thank you to my fellow panelists, Mr. and Justice Das. There was a fairly good summary that Mr. Pasha gave of what has been going on. The subject we have today is democracy under siege, the way forward. Maybe we can talk about the way forward in the Q&A that we'll have later. I'll speak about two vectors that define India post 2014. So there are two very specific things that have changed and that have shifted in our country after Mr. Modi became the Prime Minister. The first of these vectors, changes has to do with a very fierce nationalism that is aimed inwards. Normally, nationalism is aimed outwards. What is happening in India under the BJP of Mr. Modi is that nationalism is aimed at other Indian citizens, especially minorities and particularly Muslims. The first aspect of this is exclusion. India has 28 states. We don't have a single Muslim chief minister. In 15 states in India, there is no Muslim minister at all. In 10 states, there is one Muslim minister who's normally given a minority affairs, which is the case also at the center. In UP, even the cabinet minister who controls Waqf is a Hindu because they don't have a Muslim legislator and his deputy is actually a Muslim. Of the government's 303 Lok Sabha MPs, which is a full majority, the largest in 30 years, none is a Muslim. In the previous Lok Sabha, there were 282 Lok Sabha MPs for the ruling party, none was a Muslim. And this is deliberate. In a 1965 speech, Deen Dayal Upadhyay, who was then head of the Janasangh, said that the aim of the Janasangh and then the BJP was the political defeat of the Muslims. And I think that we can say that that has been achieved today. And it has been achieved not only because of the BJP, though in substantial measure it is that party, but it is also what the BJP has communicated to the rest of society and the rest of politics, that it is okay if we exclude Muslims from a democracy. And that is the reason why we don't see any kind of pushback from the rest of the polity or from media on why this exclusion is actually happening. The exclusion happens through law as well. As we have seen, as Mr. Pasha has said, the CAA specifically excludes Muslims. It assumes that the only states in South Asia that discriminate are the Muslim states, and the only people who are discriminated against are the non-Muslims. Two of India's largest refugee groups in the south, the Tamils in the north, the Tibetans are specifically excluded from the law, which assumes that it is one part of a two-clawed pincer, the other being the NRC, which is aimed at what the Home Minister of India calls termites. Beef lynching as a category of violence did not exist before 2015. So there is data that shows that 97% of all violence and 100% of all fatalities, people who were killed on the issue of beef, started after 2015. And the question is why? The Prime Minister in his campaign of 2014 and then in speeches made for laws against what he called the pink revolution. And two states responded, Maharashtra first, which was then under the BJP, Haryana second, and then the lynchings began, and then other BJP states also had these laws. What is the change in the law? What had been criminalized previously was the cattle slaughter. What was criminalized now was the possession of beef, which has nothing to do with the constitution, which does not refer to beef at all. And as Mr. Pasha has said, a burden of proof has been reversed in the laws, which goes against the basis of what we have constitutionally, which is a common law, which is what the British left us. If a person is found with a knife that has blood on it and there is a dead body next to him, it is for the state to prove that that person committed the murder. If one is accused of having beef in their fridge or their van, it is for that person to prove that that meat is not beef. And what that has resulted in is cases like a 2019 conviction in Gujarat, where a man was accused of serving beef at his daughter's wedding. The police could not prove that the meat had been beef. The judge sentenced him to 10 years, saying that it was for him to show that the meat that had been consumed was beef. This was later overturned by the Gujarat High Court. But it leads to this sort of thing. Society is damaged through these laws, and that is actually the purpose of the law. I spoke about lynching. There were two hate trackers, one by the Hindustan Times and one by this website called India Spend, which is a very reputable news website. They were monitoring the incidents of lynchings, which the government didn't want. So both these hate trackers were taken down and the editors were sacked. There is data that the government doesn't want us to see, and that is one reason why we should be putting it out. My book, my new book has data up to 2019, but I think it is required for us as a society to be able to track the episodes of violence and what actually causes them. After 2018, 5 BJP states have criminalized marriages between Hindus and Muslims. It is for the woman. It's aimed at the woman. A woman and an adult woman's testimony is insufficient evidence for the state to show that her conversion was not coerced. It is for the man she's marrying and his family to show that they did not put any kind of pressure on her. Here also the burden of proof has been reversed. Earlier in the Congress period in the 70s, we had laws that were aimed at the Christian minority, who had specifically asked for that part of Article 25 on the right to freely propagate, which was actually given to them and then taken away by subterfuge. So I think what is happening today is that the Muslims have been brought in to that same law, and the burden of proof has once again been reversed. Only BJP states have these laws. So there are 5 BJP states. Gujarat was the last one to get it. I'm told that Karnataka is looking both at laws on what is called the love jihad and on conversions generally. And it may be moved as soon as the current session. The Supreme Court held triple talaq in one sitting to be invalid, which meant that if it was delivered, it was not valid and the marriage would stay intact. After that, the government passed a law which criminalized it. So we know that regular talaq delivered over 3 months is actually valid in India. But triple talaq in one sitting is invalid, but it's also a crime. So what we have done is, if a non-Muslim man were to say these 3 words, talaq, 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 to his wife in one sitting, they would not be divorced and it would not be a crime. If a Muslim man were to say these same 3 words to his wife, they would not be divorced, but it would be a crime. And the sentence is the same as rioting with a deadly weapon, 3 years. I don't need to say, because it is obvious, that this is a specific targeting of a minority, and the aim of it is harassment. There is no higher aim. Gujarat last year, 2020, tightened a law, which is also from the Congress, but has become much more nasty since, where Muslims are forcibly kept ghettoized. So the law is called Ashant Dharo, the Disturbed Areas Act. It says that if people from different communities, Hindu and Muslim, were to either buy or rent a property, on affidavit they have to declare their faith and give it to the district magistrate or to the collector. The government will decide whether that sale or that lease can go through. And you have many cases in court where both the buyer and seller or the leaser and the rentee are, they want this a transaction to go through, but the state doesn't want it. The collector or the district magistrate can determine what they believe will change the composition of a neighborhood. So where they feel that Muslims shouldn't be given some space here, they can lawfully, by law, stop them from buying or renting spaces. What this has resulted in is a situation where foreigners can buy and rent places in Gujarat cities. And this is in all of the cities. It has come in the last 3-4 years in all the cities. That foreigners can buy and rent places in cities of Gujarat that Gujarat's Muslims cannot. Kashmir was spoken about. I'll speak about it sort of briefly. There are things that we specifically use only against Kashmiris. The weapon that is used for a crowd control, which is a 12-gauge shotgun that fires bird shot, which is usually used to kill birds. This is used on crowds. It has blinded about 1,000 people, including children who are not near the site of the protest. The rifle, the barrel is not actually rifled, so the shot just spreads. It has hurt even those people who use the weapon themselves. AFSPA is in the news. Parliament was told, Rajya Sabha was told on the 1st of January 2018 that of all of the FIRs that had been filed against the armed forces and the paramilitary since 1989 in Kashmir, all the charge sheets that have been filed after the police went into the case and found that there was a prima facie evidence of murder, torture, kidnap and rape, the center has agreed to prosecute none of them. So the Kashmir police did its job, filed the FIR, filed the charge sheet, sent it to Delhi. Delhi, since 1989, so this is not just one government, has refused to try a personnel who have been accused of these crimes. Today, Kashmir is the only part of India that doesn't have democratic rule. To what extent that is deliberate and to what extent that is because it is a Muslim majority state, we can ask ourselves. Muslims have been blamed in the recent past for the spread of COVID, for the Delhi pogrom, in which, as Yogendra Yadav said, that the victims are themselves also seen as the culprits. They cannot pray in their designated areas, that we have a large number of migrant Muslims who have gone to the national capital region, have left their villages and don't have access to a mosque. And they asked Haryana if they could be given some spaces on Friday to pray, which they were given. But now, despite government sanction, they can't pray in these places because of mobs that come and force them to stop. In Gujarat, ownership of hotels by Muslims is taken as some kind of offense by groups who come up and try to shut them down. Gujarati Muslims are not allowed to hawk food in particular places. Though the government says, the BJP government in that state says that this is not what it wants, what it has done is devolve and democratize the use of force. So the mob can determine what happens in India. It's not the state. For this reason, I think it will actually continue, that we will go through a period where the mob is empowered and will stop or try to stop what it feels should not happen. Violence is not punished by the state. Indeed, the victims of violence are punished most of the time. For this reason, I think the genie has left the bottle, and to expect, even with the change of government in 2024, that things of this sort will immediately return to normal will not actually happen. I'll turn to the second vector now on what has changed after 2014. So this is on the side of the economy, and what Mr. Modi has done through, we are now in year 8, the facts are these. 5 a crore fewer people have jobs today than had in 2013, and this is government data. This is despite the fact that 12 crore more people came off working age. The labor force participation rate in the US is 60%. This is that a proportion of the population that is of working age, 15 and more. It is 60% in the US, it's about 70% in Thailand, it's about 75% in China and in Vietnam, it is 40% here. The labor force participation rate of this country is lower than that of Pakistan. There are more women in Pakistan who work today who are over the age of 15 than women here. Jobs in manufacturing halved from 5.1 crore to 2.7 crore after 2016. The number of people who work in Manrega, which Mr. Modi called a monument to failure, has gone up by 4 times. So the budget for Narega in 2013-14 was 30,000 crore. Then it doubled to 60,000 crore. Last year it was 1,11,000 crore. This year the money has run out in the first 7 months. Indians were spending less and eating less in 2018 than they were in 2012. This is government data. This survey was not released, but it was leaked. The chief economic advisor who is leaving this week, Subramaniam, said that it should be released, but Mr. Modi has chosen not to put it out. GDP growth began a sequential decline, meaning it started falling from January 2018, according to government data, and for 13 quarters, for 3 years and 3 months, it's been on the way down. The RBI, the Reserve Bank of India, has a consumer confidence survey which asks people, were you better off last year or are you better off today? And for 5 years, except for 1 month, which is April 2019, the majority of people have said that they were worse off today than they were 1 year ago. Manufacturing's share of GDP has fallen after the Make in India program from 16% to 13%. In the same period, Bangladesh has been able to raise it. And Bangladesh, which was 50% behind India in per capita GDP terms in 2014, has today gone in front of us. The middle class has stopped growing in India. So the number of cars sold per year has not changed in 10 years. So it's about 27 lakh units. The number of houses sold in the 8 major metros has not changed in the last 10 years. It's about 3 lakh units. Last year it was less. Even the lower middle class has actually stopped growing. The number of two-wheelers sold has not grown in the last 5 years. So clearly there's a problem, but we are not able to express this problem in democratic political terms because this is not the substance of either our media debates or the debates that we have in parliament. The Azim Premji University found that last year 23 crore people fell into poverty and 28,000 dollar millionaires, people who have more than 7.5 crore rupees, have left India since 2014. Last year we had 23 more crore and we had 55 people who became billionaires. So people who own more than 7,500 crore rupees. 800 million people, 60% of the population of this country depends on 5 kilos of rice and wheat and 1 kilo of dal each month. This scheme has been continued till the end of next March. The government survey that was released this year shows that the number of people, the number of children who are stunted or wasted because of malnutrition has gone up in some states. In some states, including Gujarat, it is worse than it was in 2005. Out of 53 global indices, India has fallen on 49 since 2014. And this is also something that I've tracked in my new book. Many of these indices are run by conservative organizations like the World Bank, the World Economic Forum, and they can't be dismissed as just being something that the liberals and the leftists are saying. To sum up, on 2 fronts, I think we have shifted course since 2014. On the first, we have become majoritarian in many ways by law. So the secular part of the constitution, the preamble which the BJP is trying to get rid of through a bill that it has passed in the that it has actually introduced in the Rajya Sabha, is only that word. I think that the real meaning of the constitution comes from these post 2015 laws on beef, on marriage, that on CAA and things like that, that are specifically aimed at a community. And second, that the economic problems that we are in the midst of are very deep. They will continue, especially because just like the persecution of Muslims, the problems of the economy are not the part of a conversation in this democracy, in our parliament. And for this reason, I think that it will continue. Thank you very much.